Getting out of your comfort zone is the topic of this episode of GM Talks. If you want to train like a GM, you have to get yourself out of the comfort zone. This is where the learning takes place. This is where your skills improve. This is how you get better. And you don't like that because we don't like to be forced to look further than we're sort of able to do easily. The brain will try and switch back and say, "Oh, can I maybe look at the solution or something?" So how do GMs train? Well, they do a lot of position and exercises and studies with position where they have to calculate all the way to the end without moving the pieces. And this is the important thing. We have this position. It's a kind of simple position. There are only two kings and one black pawn and two white pawns, and it's white to move. And you, how should you approach this? Of course, you cannot start moving the pieces because then it becomes rather easy. The first thing we see is that white will of course love to get her hands on that f pawn. If you get a hand of that f pawn, then the g pawn would queen and white would win. But at the moment, if we go forward with the king, and you do this in your brain. So if we go forward the king, black will take the pawn. And if we then take the next one here, black will take this pawn. And all the pawns are gone, and the position is a draw. And this was not what white wanted. So we have to find a way to get to the f pawn without losing both our pawns. How to do that? Well, first of all, if we move the pawn forward, black will take this pawn on d5. So we can't move this pawn forward. Moving the other pawn forward, he will just take it and keep control of this. Okay, so what do we see with one thing we realize is that black might be getting into what's called zugzwang, where he has to move even though he would not like not to move. And this is a very common theme in pawn endings. This is a pawn ending and something you should always look for. So if, for instance, in this position it was black to move, then it would be zugzwang, because he would have to either go forward. If he goes here to one of these places, then white simply queens the g-pawn. Okay, so he cannot do that. And he cannot take because the pawns are defended. So he can either go here and here, but that allows white to go to f6 and win the f-pawn without losing both his pawn. And then the g-pawn will queen again. I hope you can see this. Otherwise, you have to look and get your. This is might be where your comfort zone ends, and you have to force your brain into this. Okay, so if we somehow could get black to be in the position where he had to move in this position, then he would lose. So can we lose a tempo? Okay, we see we cannot go forward with the king because the pawn is covering here. If you go to d6, he will take the pawn. So we have to keep control of the pawn. We cannot move the pawns. So there's only one move. So that's kind of easy to see. But we will not move the pieces anyway. So we will go back. This is we'll take. So this move is clear. Okay, and we know that black cannot go forward. So he has to go either to h4 or h5. If he goes to h5, we will just go to f5. That's simple, right? Then he cannot go to the f pawn, and we will go. So if he goes here, we will go, and we'll show with the yellow dots here, and take this one, and this pawn will queen. Okay, so he cannot go to h5, so he has to go to h4. What if we go to and we have the queen to f5? We go with the king to f5 after king h4. Then he goes king g3. Oh, that's annoying. Why is that annoying? Because if you go forward, he would take the pawn. When we take the pawn, he takes the last pawn like a Pac-Man, and all the pawns are gone. Okay, so we now have seen that two forced moves are king e4 and king h4. So what else can we do with the king? Maybe there's another route. Maybe we can go around with the king. We know that if he goes back, he cannot go to d3 when the king is not on f5 because then comes f5 and d6. So what about we go to d6? So we go to d5, but via d6. So we go back here, and he goes to h4, and we go to d5. So, and if he goes back to g4, what happens? We go back, and then it's his turn to move. And we already realized that if it's his turn to move in this position, he's lost immediately. Okay, so he has to go back. He will go back to h5. And we go to d6. Again, king g4, king e5, same position, but with black to move. And we know it's zugzwang, so he loses. So he has to go to g6. We go to e7. And now that looks something, because if he cannot go to f5 and attack the f pawn, we just takes his f pawn. So what are we doing with the king? We're going here. Black is going. Oops, we'll just move. Oh, here, yeah. Let's see the move. And as we explained before, he has to go here. We go forward. And if he goes back to g4, then what? Then we have king e5. So he has to go this way. And we go back. And again, king d4, king e5. And this is the key finding, realizing that if it was black to move, he would be lost due to zugzwang, or the force of you're forced to make a move. And here, king get too close to the pawn, and all attacking, and here is already totally lost. Here you can win both king f6, but the easiest way is to just go like this, and you will checkmate like this. So we go back. King e4, king h4, king d5, and remember this move, king e5, and it's zugzwang. Did you get this? So this is the kind of exercise that grandmasters do to force their brain out of the comfort zone. It's hard on the brain. It's tough. You don't want to be here. You just want to see the solution. But this is what you need to do to sort of rewire your brain. When you have plateaued, this is how you get out of it. This is how you move further. This is how you just calculating one move further and your rating go up 100 points or something. So this is how you do it. It's tough, but it can be done. And you have to force yourself to do it. A good idea is to do it with a friend, or sign up for a training program where, well, they will force you to do this, because you'll find excuses not to do it. I do all the time. I sometimes manage to do this. By the way, this exercise were from this book. It's out of print, but it's one of my favorite books. Whenever I do these tests, I always play much better. But there are different books that are quite like this, and it's out of print, so you cannot buy it. Sorry. Thank you for watching, and be back for the next video at GM Talks.